The moon hung like a silver coin in the night sky over Seoul as Ha-jun locked up the last display case in the Museum of Ancient Histories. His footsteps echoed through the empty halls as he walked past the sculptures and paintings that told stories from long ago. The clock on the wall showed 9:30 p.m., and he was the only person left in the building. Ha-jun loved his job as a museum curator. He especially enjoyed taking care of the Greek mythology section, where statues of gods and heroes stood tall and proud. His favorite display was the one about Hercules, the strongest hero of all time. Tonight, he needed to set up a new collection of items that had just arrived from Greece. As he opened the wooden crates, Ha-jun carefully removed old pieces of pottery, some broken coins, and several scrolls wrapped in protective cloth. His hands moved with gentle care as he picked up each item. The objects were very old and could break easily if not handled properly. Just a few more pieces to unpack, he said to himself, reaching deep into the last crate. His fingers touched something smooth and cold. It was a scroll, but this one felt different from the others. When he pulled it out, he noticed it had a soft, golden glow that seemed to come from within the paper itself. Ha-jun's eyes grew wide with wonder. In all his years working at the museum, he had never seen anything quite like this. The scroll was tied with a simple red string, and strange marks covered its surface. They looked like Greek letters, but they seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them. He carried the glowing scroll to his office, walking carefully through the quiet halls. The only sounds were his footsteps and the gentle hum of the building's air conditioning. Outside his window, the city lights of Seoul twinkled like earthbound stars. Sitting at his desk, Ha-jun gently untied the red string. His hands shook slightly with excitement as he slowly unrolled the scroll. The paper felt warm to his touch, like it had been sitting in sunlight, even though it had been in a dark crate all day. As he read the first few lines, the words seemed to float off the page. To those who seek the tales of old, let sleep bring forth what stories hold. Ha-jun blinked, trying to focus his eyes. The letters danced and swirled on the page, making him feel sleepy. I should take a short break, he thought, leaning back in his chair. The office felt warmer than usual, and his eyelids grew heavy. The golden glow from the scroll filled the room with soft light, like a gentle sunset. Ha-jun tried to stand up, but his body felt too heavy to move. The scroll's light grew brighter, but it didn't hurt his eyes. Instead, it felt comforting, like a warm blanket on a cold day. The last thing he saw before his eyes closed was the scroll's light spreading across his desk like flowing water. As sleep took hold, Ha-jun didn't notice the small changes happening around him. The modern sounds of the city faded away, replaced by a gentle breeze, carrying the scent of olive trees. The hard office chair beneath him slowly transformed into something else, something that felt like soft grass. The curator slept peacefully, unaware that his ordinary night at the museum was about to become something extraordinary. The scroll's magic had already begun its work, preparing to take him on a journey through time, to an age where gods walked the earth and heroes performed mighty deeds. In his last moments of consciousness, Ha-jun smiled slightly. Even in his sleep, he could feel that something wonderful was about to happen. The night was just beginning, and with it, an adventure beyond anything he could have imagined was about to unfold. When Ha-jun opened his eyes, he found himself lying on soft grass under an olive tree. The modern buildings of Seoul had disappeared. Instead, he saw rolling hills covered with trees and flowers stretching into the distance. The air smelled different here, clean and fresh, with hints of herbs and sea salt. He sat up slowly, trying to understand what had happened. His modern clothes had changed too. Now he wore a simple white tunic and leather sandals. The golden scroll that he had been reading was nowhere to be seen. "Welcome, fellow traveler," a gentle voice said behind him. Ha-jun turned to see a young woman in a long white dress with gold trim. She introduced herself as Ji-eun, and like him, she spoke Korean. "I have been waiting for someone else to arrive," Ji-eun said, helping Ha-jun stand up. "I am what they call a priestess of dreams here. I came through a similar scroll 3 nights ago." Ha-jun looked at the strange world around them. In the distance, he could see a white temple on top of a hill. Its marble columns shone in the moonlight. The stars above looked different from the ones he knew in Seoul, brighter and more numerous. Where are we exactly? Ha-Jun asked, brushing grass from his tunic. We are in ancient Greece, Ji-Yun explained. But not just any time in ancient Greece. We have arrived on a very special night. Tonight, Hercules will attempt one of his greatest tasks, bringing back Cerberus, the three-headed hound of Hades. As if responding to her words, a cool breeze blew across the hills, carrying the sound of distant waves. Ji-Yun pointed to a path that led down the hill. We should start walking. There is someone we need to meet. They walked together through fields of wildflowers that seemed to glow softly in the moonlight. Ji-Yun explained that they were chosen to witness this great event because they both had pure hearts and deep respect for the old stories. But why can't others see these scrolls glowing? Ha-Jun asked as they walked. The scrolls choose their readers, Ji-Yun said. They appear normal to most people. Only those meant to witness these events can see their true nature. As they reached the bottom of the hill, they saw a figure waiting by an ancient olive tree. It was a tall, muscular man with a beard. He wore a lion's skin as a cloak, and even in the dim light, Ha-Jun could see that this was no ordinary person. That is Hercules himself, Ji-Yun whispered. We can see and hear everything that happens, but we cannot change events. We are here to witness and remember. Ha-Jun's heart beat faster as they approached the legendary hero. Hercules turned to look at them, and to Ha-Jun's surprise, he could see them. The hero's eyes were kind, but filled with ancient wisdom. Welcome, watchers from the future, Hercules said in a voice that sounded like distant thunder. The gods have told me you would come. Tonight, you will see something few mortals have witnessed, a journey into the underworld itself. The moon rose higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the ground. In the distance, Ha-Jun could see the entrance to a cave, dark against the hillside. This was the gateway to the underworld, where their real adventure would begin. Ji-Yun touched Ha-Jun's shoulder gently. Are you ready? She asked. Once we enter that cave with Hercules, there is no turning back until the task is complete. Ha-Jun looked at the cave, then at Hercules, and finally at his new friend Ji-Yun. He took a deep breath of the sweet night air and nodded. He had read about these myths all his life, but now he would see one unfold with his own eyes. Hercules led Ha-Jun and Ji-Yun toward the cave entrance. As they walked, the legendary hero explained his mission. His voice was deep but gentle, like waves rolling onto a beach. King Eurystheus has given me 12 tasks to complete. Hercules said, This is my final challenge. I must bring Cerberus, the three-headed hound of Hades, to the surface world. But I cannot use any weapons. I must rely on my strength and wisdom alone. The moonlight made the path ahead glow silver. Suddenly, the air around them began to shimmer. A figure appeared before them in a flash of soft light. It was Hermes, the messenger of the gods. He wore winged sandals and carried his famous staff with 2 snakes wrapped around it. Greetings, mighty Hercules, Hermes said with a warm smile. He turned to look at Ha-Jun and Ji-Yun, and welcome travelers from the future. The gods have granted you special protection for this journey. Most creatures in the underworld will not be able to see you. Ha-Jun listened carefully as Hermes explained more about their protection. They would be like shadows, able to watch everything but not change the events that must happen. Only the gods and a few special beings would be able to see them. There are rules you must follow in the underworld, Hermes continued. Do not eat or drink anything while you are there. Do not try to help any spirits you see. And most importantly, stay close to Hercules at all times. Ji-Yun stepped forward and bowed respectfully to Hermes. What about Cerberus? Will the great hound be able to see us? She asked. Hermes nodded. Cerberus is no ordinary creature. The hound will know you are there, but will not harm you as long as you follow the rules I have given. The god then turned to Hercules and handed him a golden branch. This is a gift from Zeus himself. Show this to Hades when you meet him. It will help you gain his permission to borrow Cerberus. As Hercules took the branch, Ha-Jun noticed how it glowed with the same kind of light as the scroll that had brought him here. The hero carefully tucked it into his belt, next to where his famous club hung. Remember, Hermes said, Cerberus must not be harmed. This task is not about fighting. It is about showing respect to the rulers of the underworld and their guardian. The god's words made Ha-Jun think differently about the story he had read so many times. In the museum's books, this task was always described as a great battle, but now he was learning that it was more about wisdom than warfare. "It is time," Hercules announced, looking at the cave entrance. The opening seemed to grow darker, as if it was pulling in the night itself. Before disappearing, Hermes gave them one last piece of advice. The underworld may seem frightening, but it is simply another part of the natural order. Treat it with respect, and you will find your way through safely. With a gentle nod and a flash of light, Hermes vanished. The night air grew cooler, and Ha-Jun could feel a gentle breeze coming from the cave. It carried strange smells, earth, water, and something else he couldn't name. Hercules turned to his two companions. "Are you ready to begin our descent?" he asked. His voice was kind but serious. Ha-Jun and Ji-Eun looked at each other. They had come too far to turn back now. Together with the legendary hero, they faced the cave entrance. The greatest part of their journey was about to begin. The cave entrance felt different from any cave Ha-Jun had ever seen. Instead of complete darkness, soft blue lights glowed along the walls. These lights looked like tiny stars trapped in the rock, showing them the way forward. Hercules led the way down the sloping path. His lion skin cloak moved gently in the underground breeze. Ha-Jun and Ji-Eun followed close behind him, remembering Hermes' warning to stay near the hero at all times. As they walked deeper underground, the air grew cooler but not uncomfortably cold. The path twisted and turned, but always seemed to lead downward. The glowing lights made beautiful patterns on the walls, casting gentle shadows that danced as they moved. "Look there," Ji-Eun whispered, pointing ahead. A young man stood in an alcove of the cave. He wore simple gray clothes and held a lamp that gave off silver light. When he saw them approach, he bowed deeply to Hercules. "Welcome, mighty one," the young man said. "I am Sangmin, a spirit guide of these passages. I have been waiting for you." His voice echoed softly against the cave walls. Hercules nodded in greeting. "Can you tell us what lies ahead, spirit guide?" Sangmin lifted his lamp higher, illuminating more of the passage. "The path to the underworld is peaceful today. The spirits are calm, and the way to Hades' palace is clear. But you must still be careful. Even peaceful paths can hold surprises." Ha-Jun noticed that Sangmin could see him and Ji-Eun, just as Hermes had said some spirits would. The young guide smiled at them kindly before continuing his explanation. "Soon you will reach the rivers of the underworld," Sangmin said. "The ferryman Karen has been told to expect you. He will take you across without asking for payment." As they walked together, Sangmin told them about life in the underworld. He explained that it wasn't the scary place many people imagined. Instead, it was a place of peace and rest, where spirits could find calm after their time in the world above. The tunnel eventually opened into a vast cave. The ceiling was so high that Ha-Jun couldn't see it in the dim light. Ahead of them, he could hear the gentle sound of flowing water. The air smelled fresh here, like morning dew on grass. "The river Styx," Hercules said quietly, "the boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the dead." Through the soft darkness, they could see a simple wooden boat approaching. An old man in dark robes stood at one end, holding a long pole. This was Karen, the ferryman of the underworld. His face was serious but not unkind. "The boat will carry us all," Sangmin assured them. Karen's craft always has room for those who are meant to cross. As they waited for the boat to reach their shore, Ha-Jun felt a strange sense of peace. The underworld was nothing like the frightening place he had read about in stories. Instead, it felt like walking through a quiet garden at night. Sangmin lifted his lamp one last time. "Remember," he said, "in the underworld, gentleness often works better than strength. Even the mighty Cerberus responds to kindness." The boat touched the shore with a gentle bump. Karen gestured for them to board, his movement smooth and graceful. Together, they stepped onto the ferry that would take them deeper into the realm of Hades, moving closer to their meeting with the famous three-headed Hound. The boat glided smoothly across the river Styx. When they reached the other shore, a beautiful sight greeted them. Before them lay Persephone's garden, filled with flowers that glowed with soft silver light. The garden stretched far into the distance, creating paths of gentle light through the darkness. Hercules stepped off the boat first, helping the others onto the shore. Even the mighty hero seemed moved by the peaceful beauty of this place. The flowers swayed gently, though there was no wind in the underworld. "Welcome to my garden," a melodic voice called out. A young woman in flowing robes appeared between the glowing flowers. She introduced herself as Yujin, Persephone's handmaiden and keeper of the eternal garden. "These flowers never die," Yujin explained as she led them along a silver path. "They bloom forever in the soft light of the underworld. Each one holds a happy memory from the world above." Hajun noticed that some flowers glowed brighter than others. Yujin saw his curious look and smiled. "The brightest flowers hold the strongest memories," she said. "Love, joy, and kindness make them shine more intensely." As they walked through the garden, Ji Yun reached out to touch one of the glowing petals. "Be careful," Yujin warned gently. "The flowers hold real memories. Touch them, and you might see someone else's happy moment." They came to a clearing where crystal fountains sparkled with clear water. "This is where Cerberus often rests," Yujin told them. "The great hound enjoys the peaceful atmosphere of the garden." Hercules listened carefully to everything Yujin said. "How does Cerberus behave in the garden?" he asked. The hero seemed more interested in understanding the hound than in planning how to capture it. "Cerberus is gentler than most people think," Yujin replied. "The hound guards the underworld not through fear, but through wisdom. Each of its 3 heads has its own way of thinking." She pointed to a path that led away from the garden. "The left head is playful and curious. The middle head is protective and watchful. The right head is peaceful and thoughtful. Together, they maintain perfect balance." Hajun realized that everything he had learned about Cerberus in the museum had been wrong. The stories portrayed the hound as a monster, but here it was described as a wise guardian. Yujin gathered some of the glowing flowers and handed them to Hercules. "These might help you," she said. "Cerberus appreciates beauty and kindness. Show respect, and the hound will respond in kind." Before they continued their journey, Yujin had one more piece of advice. "Remember," she said, "in the underworld, things are not always what they seem. What looks frightening might be gentle, and what appears simple might hold great power." The group thanked Yujin for her help and followed the path she had shown them. The light from Persephone's garden slowly faded behind them, but the flowers Hercules carried continued to glow, lighting their way forward. As they walked, Hajun thought about how different this journey was from what he had expected. Instead of a tale of battle and conquest, it was becoming a story about understanding and respect. The path led them to a wide open space where the ceiling of the underworld stretched high above. Soft light came from glowing crystals in the walls. In the center of this space lay Cerberus, the famous 3-headed hound of Hades. Hajun's heart beat faster when he first saw Cerberus. The hound was enormous, bigger than any animal he had ever seen. Each of its 3 heads was the size of a small car. But instead of looking fierce, Cerberus appeared peaceful, watching them with intelligent eyes. Hercules stepped forward slowly, holding the glowing flowers from Persephone's garden. The left head of Cerberus lifted first, sniffing the air with interest. Its tail began to move gently against the ground. "Great guardian," Hercules said in a respectful voice, "I come with permission from the gods." He showed the golden branch that Zeus had given him. The middle head studied them carefully, while the right head remained calm and relaxed. Just as Yujin had told them, each head showed a different personality. The hound's black fur shimmered with hints of silver in the crystal light. Ji-Eun whispered to Ha-Chun, "Look how gentle it seems, nothing like the scary monster in the old stories." Ha-Chun nodded, amazed by what they were seeing. Hercules took another step forward and placed the glowing flowers on the ground. The left head, the playful one, reached down to smell them. A soft rumble, almost like a purr, echoed through the chamber. "Noble Cerberus," Hercules continued, "I must complete a task for King Eurystheus. Would you allow me to guide you to the surface world for a short time? I promise to bring you back safely." The 3 heads looked at each other, as if having a silent conversation. Then middle head, the protective one, turned to look behind them. Everyone followed its gaze and saw a new figure approaching. It was Suho, a young messenger of Hades. carrying a scroll. He walked up to them with quiet steps and bowed to Hercules. "My lord Hades has been watching," Suho said. "He asks that you treat Cerberus with respect and return the Hound before sunrise." The right head, known for its peaceful nature, gently nuzzled Suho. The young messenger smiled and patted the massive nose. "Cerberus knows you will keep your word," he said to Hercules. Hercules approached Cerberus slowly. Each head watched him with different expressions: curiosity, caution, and calm acceptance. The hero reached out and placed his hand on the Hound's shoulder. The fur was soft and warm. To everyone's surprise, Cerberus slowly stood up. The movement was graceful despite the Hound's enormous size. All three heads lowered to look at Hercules, and the giant tail wagged gently. Ha-Jun and Ji-Yoon watched in amazement as Hercules spoke softly to the three-headed Hound. There was no battle, no struggle, just mutual respect between two powerful beings. This was so different from the violent tales Ha-Jun had read in his books. "The task will soon be complete," Suho said, "but remember, this story is about more than just completing a challenge. It is about understanding that strength comes in many forms." The great hall of Hades stretched before them, lit by tall black columns that glowed with soft purple light. Hades himself sat on his throne, looking both powerful and wise. His dark robes seemed to move like shadows, but his face was kind. Suho led Hercules, Ha-Jun, and Ji-Yoon into the hall. Behind them, Cerberus walked quietly, all three heads held high. The Hound's footsteps made no sound on the smooth black floor. "Welcome, mighty Hercules," Hades said in a deep, calm voice. "I understand you wish to borrow my faithful guardian for your task." The god's words echoed gently through the hall. Hercules bowed respectfully. "Yes, Lord Hades. I ask for your permission to take Cerberus to the surface world for a short time. I promise to protect and return your noble Hound before the sun rises." Ha-Jun watched as Hades considered this request. The god of the underworld reached out to pet Cerberus, who had moved to stand beside the throne. Each head received equal attention from their master's gentle hand. "Cerberus is more than just a guardian," Hades explained. "This Hound helps maintain the balance between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. We must be careful about removing such an important being, even briefly." Suho stepped forward with his scroll and began to write as Hades spoke. The young messenger's brush moved smoothly across the paper, recording every word of the agreement they were making. "I will allow this," Hades continued, "but there must be clear rules. Suho will write them down, and both of us must agree to them." Everyone listened carefully as Hades listed his conditions. Cerberus must be treated with respect. The Hound must not be harmed. The visit to the surface world must be brief. Most importantly, Cerberus must return willingly, not by force. Ha-Jun noticed how different this was from the stories he knew. In the old tales, Hercules fought and captured Cerberus, but here they were making a peaceful agreement, writing everything down like a proper business deal. Suho finished writing and showed the scroll to both Hades and Hercules. The agreement looked beautiful, written in flowing letters that seemed to shine on the paper. "Sign here, mighty hero," Suho said, offering his brush to Hercules. "And here, my lord," he added, turning to Hades. As they signed the agreement, the purple light in the hall grew slightly brighter. It seemed that even the underworld itself approved of this peaceful solution. "Remember," Hades said as he finished signing, "true strength often lies in wisdom and respect, not in force. You have shown both today, Hercules." The hero carefully rolled up the signed scroll and handed it back to Suho for safekeeping. Cerberus walked over to stand beside Hercules, ready for their journey to the surface world. Ha-Jun and Ji-Yoon exchanged amazed looks. They had just witnessed something remarkable, a moment where wisdom and kindness achieved more than any display of power could have. The journey back to the surface world happened just as peacefully as everything else. Hercules led the way, with Cerberus walking calmly beside him. Ha-Jun and Ji-Yoon followed, still amazed by how gentle the massive three-headed Hound could be. When they reached the surface, the night sky stretched above them filled with bright stars. The moon was setting, painting the world in soft silver light. Cerberus looked up at the sky with all three heads, seeming to enjoy the fresh night air. We have a little time before sunrise, Hercules said softly. Cerberus can rest here for a moment. The hero sat down on a large rock, and the great hound settled beside him. Hadjun watched as each of Cerberus's heads showed its unique personality. The playful left head watched fireflies dancing in the night air. The protective middle head kept a watchful eye on their surroundings. The peaceful right head rested gently against Hercules's shoulder. The stories got it all wrong. Ji Yuan whispered to Ha-Jun, "This isn't a tale about capturing a monster. It's about understanding and respect." Soon, the first light of dawn began to show in the eastern sky. Hercules stood up and gently patted each of Cerberus's heads. "It's time to return you home, noble guardian," he said. The walk back to the cave entrance felt different now. Ha-Jun noticed how the path seemed easier to follow, as if the underworld itself was welcoming them back. The glowing lights along the cave walls burned a little brighter. At the entrance to the underworld, they found Suho waiting for them. The young messenger smiled and bowed. "You have kept your word, mighty Hercules," he said. "Lord Hades is pleased." Cerberus walked over to Suho, and all three heads nuzzled the messenger gently. Then the great hound turned and disappeared into the cave, heading home to guard the realm of Hades once more. As the sun's first rays touched the horizon, Ha-Jun felt a strange tingling sensation. He looked at his hands and saw they were starting to fade, becoming transparent like morning mist. "Our time here is ending," Ji-Un said, her form also becoming less solid. "We have seen what we were meant to see." Hercules turned to them with a kind smile. "Return to your time," he said. "Tell this story as you have witnessed it. Let others know that the greatest victories often come not from fighting, but from understanding." The world around them began to fade. The last thing Ha-Jun saw was Hercules standing in the golden light of dawn, the hero's face peaceful and satisfied with his completed task. Ha-Jun opened his eyes to find himself back in his office at the museum. The mysterious scroll lay on his desk, but now it looked like an ordinary piece of ancient paper. Yet when he picked it up, he could still feel a trace of warmth in it. He looked out his window at the modern city of Seoul, now brightening with the morning sun. The world seemed different somehow, as if he understood something important that he hadn't known before. On his desk, he found a single flower petal that glowed with a soft silver light, a small reminder that some stories are more peaceful and beautiful than we first imagined them to be.